Iranians protest after woman's death over hijab. On September 13, 2022, a woman was arrested by Iran's morality police for not wearing her headscarf correctly. After 3 days in prison, the woman, Mahsa Amini, died. Since 1979, Iran has had strict religious rules. However, the rules became even stricter after President Ebrahim Raisi was elected in 2021. The morality police now check that people follow the rules, including the wearing of headscarves. Women are required to wear a hijab, which covers the head, neck, and hair, but not the face. Mahsa Amini's hijab didn't cover all of her hair, which led to her arrest. After Amini's death, thousands of people across the country poured onto the streets to protest. They expressed their anger by removing and burning their hijabs. The government used force against the protesters and blocked the internet. However, despite the government's violent response, the protests became the largest since 2019. Many countries have criticized Iran's treatment of Ms. Amini and the protesters. There have also been large rallies in major cities globally.
Hi everyone, welcome to English for You. I'm Kat.
And I'm Elsie.
And today we are talking about some news that we have to share with you.
Ooh.
Yeah, so news can be good or bad. Unfortunately, this story is really, really serious, but it's really important to talk about because it involves human rights, and it involves politics, and it involves a country which is in a lot of turmoil, you could say. It's in a lot of let's say that the citizens are not feeling too good about things these days.
Right.
Yeah. So, of course, we begin by talking about the date. On September 13th, 2022, a woman was arrested by Iran's morality police for not wearing her headscarf correctly. She was arrested. To arrest somebody means using the power of the law to take and keep somebody, such as a criminal. So in this case, she was taken by the morality police. We'll talk about what those are later, but they put her in handcuffs. They took her to jail. And she was taken for not wearing her headscarf correctly. So an example for arrest, Jane was arrested for stealing groceries from the local supermarket. So, yeah, she was arrested. And this woman was arrested too. And she was arrested by morality police. Basically, they're police who keep laws about right and wrong behavior. So instead of saying, you drove too fast, you broke the law, you stole something, you broke the law, it's you are not acting like a proper citizen. You are not dressing correctly. You are not behaving like a woman or a man should.
Ooh.
That's morality police.
Okay, so in Iran, there are morality police.
Yes. Free countries do not have these because in free countries, you are allowed to say or think or act in the way you like as long as you're not hurting anybody. But Iran has very strict rules about this.
也就是道德警察，好，这个在一般的民主国家其实是不会出现的。那我们刚刚看到的这个 arrest 这个动词就是逮捕或是拘捕，那被动很常出现，那就是 was arrested by， 好，那就是被逮捕、被拘捕。那另外呢 arrest 也可以当作名词使用哦。如果你要说某人被逮捕了、被拘捕了，你可以说 somebody is under arrest， 好像是呢警察要去逮捕犯人的时候呢，可能会跟他说 you are under arrest。 那这边我们说到的这个女性 this woman was arrested by Iran's morality police， 刚刚讲到他们是道德警察。She was arrested because she was not wearing her headscarf correctly.
That's right. And what happened to her? Unfortunately, nothing good. After 3 days in prison, the woman, Mahsa Amini, died. And she was quite young. I think she was in her early 20s. And she died. And everybody wondered, how could she have just died in prison?
Right, just after 3 days in prison. Maybe
so
she was...
people think she was murdered.
Or she was tortured?
Yeah. I mean, that would be murder. Yeah, if the police killed her. They don't think she just died from being sick or something.
Ugh.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's a lot of background to talk about why would somebody be arrested for not wearing a headscarf. So we're going to talk about that now. Since 1979, Iran has had strict religious rules. That's true. So Iran is a Muslim country, and they have strict religious rules. We'll talk about that in a second, but first we need to know what is strict. When something is strict, it's used to describe a rule or a command or something that must be obeyed. Like if you don't obey it, you will be punished, or you will be yelled at, or maybe your parents will think badly of you or just force you to do it. So strict means that there's no room to not do it. I think Taiwan's traffic laws, they're supposed to be strict, but they're not.
They're not.
No, they're not very strict. People break them all the time, and the police are kind of like, eh. So that's not strict.
Most people don't care about the rules here.
Exactly.
Especially traffic rules.
Yeah, so if they were more strict, that would mean that anytime somebody broke the law in traffic, they would get pulled over, they would get fined, they would get arrested, something like that. Another example, the students are under strict orders not to tell anyone about the book club.
Strict 这个形容词呢，就是严格的、严谨的，那可以用来形容 rules， 好，那就是严格严谨的规范，也可以用来形容人，像是呢 be strict with somebody， 那就是呢某人对另外一个人相当严格。For example, my parents were very strict with me when I was a child.
So there are very strict laws in Iran because it is a Muslim country, and in many Muslim beliefs, women have to cover their hair. They have to cover their hair, and depending on how strict they are, they might have to cover their body too. So they have to wear very loose clothes. But in Iran, at least, women always have to cover their hair in public. And Mahsa Amini was not doing it correctly, according to the morality police. So, however, the rules became even stricter after President Ibrahim Raisi was elected in 2021. So the new president was elected that year. When you elect somebody, it means you select them for a position or a job by voting. And so presidents are elected by the people. The people vote for them. They say, I want this person to win. I want this other person to win. And the person who wins is elected. An example, the country just elected its first female president this year. We usually use elect to talk about people in politics.
这个 elect 的用法呢，在例句当中是一个主动，好，那就是选举推选。那被动也很常见，那就是 be elected as 后面加上他的职位，像是呢，我们可以说 Joe Biden was elected as the 46th president of the United States.
That's right.
对，就46届的美国总统，好，就是他被选为的。那再来呢，名词是 election， 那选民投票者就是 voter， 那他们去投票的动作是 vote, V-O-T-E. So after the new president took office, the rules became even stricter.
Right, because I remember seeing before that Iranian women sometimes will just wear their headscarves like kind of loose. There's some hair sticking out. Like they kind of just put them on like, yeah, I have to wear it, but I'm not going to wear it like really strictly. And now apparently things are very different. So the morality police now check that people follow the rules, including the wearing of headscarves. Women are required to wear a hijab, which covers the head, neck, and hair, but not the face.
Yeah, and the police there said, Masha, did I pronounce the name well?
I think Mahsa.
Mahsa?
Mahsa.
Well, she wasn't wearing properly, according to those morality police.
Yeah, exactly. So Mahsa Amini's hijab didn't cover all of her hair, which led to her arrest. So, yes, we see arrest here as a noun instead of a verb. Her arrest means like she was arrested. It means the same thing. So, she was arrested, and then 3 days later, she died under circumstances that nobody knows. So, they think that she was probably killed. After Amini's death, thousands of people across the country poured onto the streets to protest. They poured. This is kind of a metaphorical use of pour, but we are going to talk about what it literally means. To pour means to cause something to flow into a container or into a place. So let's say that you are making tea. You have to pour water into your cup to make tea, or you pour the tea into the cup. Or maybe you would pour something out, like if you have a bowl of soup and you are done with it, you want the rest to go into the trash, you pour it in there. But to pour onto the streets means basically you think of people like a liquid, and so many of them came out that the streets were full of people, and basically they were protesting because they were very, very angry. So another example of pour. After the movie ended, people poured out of the theater to go back home.
Pour, P-O-U-R 这个动词哈是倒的动作，所以像是你跟人家说，你可以帮我倒杯水喝吗？ Would you pour me a glass of water? 好，你会用到这个动词。那这边呢讲到的 pour onto or into something， 那就是涌上或是涌入。像是这边的 they were protesting， 他们在抗议，他们在反对，所以他们必须要涌上街头去做这件事情。Protest 这个动词呢是抗议、反对。
So people were very, very angry. They expressed their anger by removing and burning their hijabs. The government used force against the protesters and blocked the internet. Yeah, I remember this. So Iranian protesters couldn't use the internet to help organize or to spread the news about what was happening in Iran. So people were like, what is going on? We don't know. Are they safe? We don't know. And they used force, which means that they basically had the police go out and shoot people. They had them go with riot shields and hit people to get them to leave. They were very violent.
So the government used force against the protesters. 当我们看到 protest 后面加上 er 的时候，那就变成抗议的人、抗议者。
However, despite the government's violent response, the protests became the largest since 2019. Yeah, so 2019, some other bad things happened, but 2021 or 2022, something worse happened and people were mad again.
那接下来我们要看到一个是 language in focus 的用法。Despite 还有 in spite of 好，这两个呢都是介系词片语，那用来表达尽管虽然，后面呢需要接上名词或是动名词才可以。好，所以句型会是呢 despite 或是 in spite of 加上名词或动名词，然后逗号之后再接上主词以及一个动词。For example, despite or in spite of the snowstorm, he still arrived at the office on time. 尽管有暴风雪，他还是准时抵达办公室。那我们也可以说啊，像是 despite or in spite of having a lot of work to do, he still manages to go home and have dinner with his family every night. 尽管工作很多，他还是设法每晚回家跟家人吃饭。好，所以这边你看到的 despite 或是 in spite of 后面加的就是一个动名词 having。那再来呢 despite 和 in spite of 它都不可以直接连接子句哦。如果你要连接子句的话，必须要在子句前面加上 the fact that 来作为介系词的受词，或是依照句意改用从属连接词 although 或是 though 也可以。所以句子啊，我们再给同学们一个例句哦。Despite or in spite of the fact that it was late and raining outside, Kevin still went out with his friends. 好，虽然呢又晚又下雨的 Kevin 还是跟朋友出去了。这一句如果你要用 although 或是 though 来改也是可以的哦，会变成 although or though it was late and raining outside, Kevin still went out with his friends.
So as we already said of the protesters, or not the protesters, but the government, they had a violent response to the protesters. Violent, we talked about it a little bit, you know, it can involve hitting people, shooting people. It's using physical force to cause harm or damage to someone or something. So you can be violent against people, or you can be violent against things. Like, let's say if you smash a plate on the floor, that's a violent action. But in this case, it was violence by the police against protesters. So another example, the two girls got into a violent fight where they hit each other in the face.
violent 这个形容词好，暴力的。
Yeah, so violent. And of course, because the government doesn't want the protesters to, well, win, or they don't want the other people to know about what's happening, they stop the internet. And what happened as a result? Many countries have criticized Iran's treatment of Ms. Amini and the protesters. Yeah, criticize would be one word for it. I hope that it could be more than criticize.
批评跟指责的这个动词 criticize.
Yep. There have also been large rallies in major cities globally. So rallies are when people come together to protest. Like you can see Ukrainian citizens in Taipei, they rally at the Russian embassy every week still. But this has been happening globally. So there were people all over the world. That's global. When you talk about global, it's all over the world. It's involving the entire world. So people all over the world were protesting and giving rallies to support Mahsa Amini and to support the protesters. Another example, the realities of climate change present a globally worrying problem. That means it's about everybody.
Globally 这个副词指的就是全世界里或是在全球。那你把字尾的 ly 拿掉，你会看到 global 这个形容词，那可以形容很多东西哦，像是 global news 全球的新闻， global problems 全球的问题， global climate change 那就是全球气候变迁的问题。Rally 这个名词指的是集会。
So that's what we've got about the news story. And this happened last year, so we know that since then, the government has not changed, but I think Iranians are still thinking of ways to fight for their rights and to change things for the better.
Yeah, they're still trying to change the situation.
They are. And so we have our For You chat question for today. It's actually quite a difficult or controversial question. Do you think the protesters' actions are a brave way to fight for their rights, or do you think they are dangerous and could lead to more violence? Why? Different people have different answers to this. What about you?
I think they are indeed brave to do that. But at the same time, they should protect themselves too.
Yeah, I mean, I want them to be safe. At the same time, I also know that through history, if there are times when the government is not listening to you, the only thing you can do is protest. And it does result in change. The reason that we have rights as workers now, the reason that we have pay, that we have health insurance, and that we're able to take sick leave, that we only have to work 8 hours a day, that's all because people protested for those things. Because before that, working conditions were much, much worse. That's just one example.
Right. Without them, we won't be able to have what we have now.
Exactly. So it's up to people to be brave and to fight for what they want, fight for what they deserve. And I think that it's important to do it in a way that you are not making people think you're in the wrong. Like, don't burn buildings down because then the news will say that you are violent. But if you are fighting for your rights, you got to keep fighting. Yeah, that's what I think. So anyway, we have told you all about this news in Iran. Keep following the situation because it is ongoing. So for English for You, I'm Kat.
I'm Elsie.
And we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Vocabulary Review.
Arrest. The police caught the thief and arrested him before they took him to the police station. Strict. The company has strict rules. If you're even 1 minute late, you lose half a day's pay. Elect. Joe Biden was elected to be the president of the U.S. in 2020. Pour. The passengers poured out of the train and onto the platform as soon as it stopped. Violent. Madeline won't let her kids watch violent movies because they have so much death and killing in them. Globally. McDonald's started with just one restaurant in California, but now you can find McDonald's restaurants globally.
智慧小补帖
Protest. Protest. Criticize. Rally.
以上节目是由活用空中美语制作，活用空中美语杂志，请洽询全国各大书店。如欲索取试听教材，请来电02-2364-4000 02-2364-4000，或上网查询，网址是 www.english4u.net www.english4u.net